Before we get started, we just wanted to thank Old Republic Surety for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety, as well as NASBP's virtual seminars for the third year in a row. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com. Now, on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Welcome to this episode of Let's Get Surety. Today I have my co-host Mark McCallum, CEO of NASBP with me. Hey Mark.
Hey Kat, it is great to be here. I'm really looking forward to today's show.
I always love having you on with me, Mark. And today we're going to be talking about the joint NASBP SFAA fly-in for 2021. And to do that, we have with us Larry LeClaire, Director of Government Relations at NASBP. Hey, Larry.
Hey, good morning, Kat. Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having me here this morning. Looking forward to the conversation.
I feel like you're almost a co-host now too, Larry. I get to talk to you all the time on here. I love it.
I know. I'm getting quite accustomed to doing this now, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable about it. You're a great host, so you make everyone feel comfortable, so thanks.
You're building a fan base, Larry.
I'll be signing autographs at the end of the session.
And we also have Dalton Defendis. He's Director of Federal Affairs at SFAA. Hey, Dalton, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for having me. And unlike Larry, this is my first podcast. So
we'll ease you into it, Dalton.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll be signing autographs after this eventually, too.
I'm sure you will. You guys will be in hot demand. So the fly-in for 2021, it's virtual, right?
That's right, Kat. A little unusual that we've undertaking this, but we have to do what you have to do in these times, and so we're going to try and move forward, and hopefully it'll be a huge success for both organizations.
I'm sure the attendees will miss getting their lunch in the Longworth cafeteria, but we will make do given the times we're living in.
So I'll probably ask you guys this and repeatedly, because I want everybody to know. So what are the dates for this virtual fly-in?
Sure, Mark. March 25th is the day of the fly-in. So please mark your calendars. I know SFAA and NASBP have been advertising the dates. It's located on the NASBP website under the advocacy link where attendees can sign up. But please remember, if you don't take anything away from today, March 25th, mark your calendars.
And Larry, since it's virtual, can they wait till the 25th or should they sign up in advance?
Good question. And actually, Dalton and I will be on a conversation call this week with the vendors that are going to be pulling this off for us. I suspect you're going to have to give yourself no more than a week, maybe a week. I would suggest 2 weeks in advance. So make sure you get those registration in as soon as possible, but the latest 2 weeks. But that may be subject to change. But that's my thought right now. And I don't know, Dalton, if you have any additional thoughts on that.
No, thanks, Larry. And really the reason for that is, we work with this group, Prime Advocacy, to schedule these meetings well in advance and make sure the staffers are prepared and have all of the information of who's going to be participating in the meetings more than a week out from the actual meeting date itself. So it is critically important, as Larry mentioned, to get in your registration early, at minimum a week, but more realistically 2 weeks before the event date.
So even though it's virtual, we'll still be having live meetings. Is that right? I just want to make sure everybody knows.
Go ahead, Dalton. I'll let you field this and I'll jump in.
Yep, absolutely. These are going to be live meetings, primarily conference calls and potentially some video chats as well. But we've seen these virtual conferences scheduled in the past, and I know Larry and I have become more accustomed than we probably ever thought we would conducting all of our government affairs business over the phone this past year. So yes, all of these will be live meetings.
Yeah, and that's spot on, and I really wouldn't have much to offer. The only thing I've heard is what Dalton has said, that through the vendor that's pulling these off for us. If it's a meeting, if you're fortunate enough to secure a meeting with a member of Congress, then perhaps that meeting would be a Zoom meeting, because certainly members of Congress like to be visible before their constituents.
So Larry and Dalton, and I'll point this at one of you and then let the other one answer as well. I know, there are a lot of people who sometimes think that participating in a legislative fly-in is intimidating. And perhaps that's because they don't know what to expect. I like to think that both organizations have made this a very easy process. But this virtual fly-in, I think you've made it really easy. Dalton, would you kind of care to characterize why it's easy? I mean, what do people have to do other than register?
No, it's once you register, we take care of almost everything on the back end, and that goes from scheduling your meetings, preparing your talking points and briefing materials, and even providing those materials in advance of the meeting, so you're not getting bogged down in the entire Surety 101 conversation, and the staffer you're meeting with is going to have some context rather than just you hitting them cold with a slew of information. So we'll take care of all the logistics, and ultimately it's upon you as a constituent of the member of Congress you're meeting with to help sell the advocacy message on behalf of the surety industry.
Right.
Yeah, and I would add too, Mark, as well. I mean, those points are spot on, and certainly as we've done in the past, if it was an in-person meeting, we have prepped the attendees in advance. We'll do a similar type format this time as well. Prime Associates will do a sort of a 101 what to expect during the virtual fly-in, and at that point, Dalton and I will also run through the talking points, so everyone is prepared in advance of what to expect and what those points are expected to be delivered to the member and or the staffer.
So basically, you're giving an orientation. You're giving them materials that they can use for their speaking points. The arrangements are being made for them. And I believe even the lines or whatever are being presented through the consultant. So really, they can focus on being the best advocate they can be, right? So what would some of the tips be, Larry, on how to be an effective advocate, for your industry?
Yeah, I mean, and those are good points to make, Mark, and those are something that we've always stressed is when attendees go in and they meet with their member of Congress, have a good understanding of what the points are in front of you. This might be a little bit easier now because certainly you're not in front of the member or the staffer. You might be a little bit more at ease. You can actually look at the points while you're having the conversation, most likely via the telephone or a conference call or through a Zoom meeting. But have a good understanding of the points in advance. Also, make your points concise, be clear. And my big thing is, I've always said, is make a personal reference to the state. So if you're meeting with your representative from a particular state, make that reference applicable and make that reference so that the member understands how this impacts their constituents, their state. If you're talking about construction on a particular state project, try and make that connection with the member. So, because members always think they're counting, hate to think this, but they're counting votes. How does this impact me? How does this impact my constituents? So make the connection, the state connection between the point and the member of Congress.
Great. Dalton, Larry was saying about making connections. Are there certain things that somebody should avoid or shouldn't do? Like, decide that you want to be a little combative. Is that a productive direction to take?
No, thank you, Mark. And a strong rule of thumb is to not be combative to a man or woman during these meetings or their staff. Ultimately, the points we will be laying out for the attendees of this fly-in, I don't anticipate to be controversial, but I would highly recommend, avoiding wading into territories that can get dicey. Ultimately, the attendees will be meeting with both Republican and Democratic members and their staff throughout the fly-in. So it's important to emphasize the bipartisan nature of a lot of the issues the surety industry is advocating on. And just to piggyback off of one thing that Larry mentioned in his comments is I cannot emphasize enough how important connecting our issues to the member's district or state is to really driving home our advocacy message. And this can range from emphasizing that the company you work for employs a certain amount of employees in the state. I know a lot of SFAA members are some of the larger insurance carriers that have a large presence in Maryland, Connecticut, and almost all 50 states. Or even bringing it home to a project you've worked on or bonded in their district. All of these, small nuggets may not seem important, but really leave a lasting impression during these meetings.
Right.
Those are excellent points to make, Dalton. Spot on. I mean, you make the connection back to the home district and or state. I can't emphasize that enough.
Now, when you go on these, whether it's virtual or in person, who should you expect to meet with? Are you always going to meet with a member of Congress, or do you meet with other people?
And I'd be happy to jump in, Mark, and Dalton follow up. Typically, what we've seen in the past is it's usually a staff person, unless you that fly-in participant has a connection with that particular office. Then it could be the member, or it could be the senator. But typically, it's the staffer that's charged with construction, transportation-related issues. So the staffer will most likely know the issues, not so much maybe surety-related issues, but they'll be well-versed on what's happening as far as infrastructure is concerned. It's usually that staffer that handles that particular portfolio. And there are occasions where you would meet with a member, but typically it's the connection you've made before you go into the office.
So by meeting a staff person, they're every bit as important as the member, him or herself. Do you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that, because keep in mind that staffer is usually briefs the chief of staff, and then from there the chief would brief the member on the activities of the office throughout the week. So yes, I mean, even if you're meeting with a legislative aide or a correspondent, that message will be filtered back to the chief of staff, who is direct contact with the member.
Right. And Dalton, how conversant usually are these congressional offices on surety bonds in general?
I would say, Mark, most of these staffers we're working with handle a whole host of issues for their member of Congress, and more likely than not will not be well versed on surety issues specifically. That being said, we will provide them, materials in advance of the meeting to get them up to speed on the issues we'll be talking about. However, these staffers often handle dozens, if not more, issues within a certain portfolio, and can't be expected to be experts on everything. However, that's where we come into play as the expert advocates in the surety industry. It's our job to translate very easy to understand and digest messages about our advocacy priorities. So all of the topics we'll be talking about during these meetings, we'll try to our best ability to distill them down into very, very digestible messages. And it's important, too, to understand that they will turn to you as the surety representative to be knowledgeable on the topic. So during these meetings, the SFAA and NASBP members will be looked upon to be the experts and answer any questions they may have about how surety works, what is the purpose of a bond, and really provide them some of that surety 101 background.
Can you give us a sneak peek of some of the issues we'll be focusing on during the fly-in?
It's Larry, and I would say, and to Dalton's point, the first thing that we've always said, and now I think I was counting this up the other day, and I think, Mark, this would be about my 13th time doing this, so I'm kind of getting good at it.
Getting used to it, maybe.
But no, I would say that, and to Dalton's point, the first thing we've always asked the participants to do is talk about, the importance of the product, right? And the product and what it protects, the subcontractors, the suppliers, the federal government in this instance, the public owner. That's the first point that we always stress. Talk about, the importance and the number of businesses you touch in your particular state and what that product does. That's the number one issue. And agents or underwriters certainly will be able to talk at length about the importance of the surety bond product. And that's boom, from the get-go. That's what we asked our participants to say. Or do.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it seems like particularly this fly-in, I think all fly-ins are important, but this fly-in really takes on some additional significance. One being that you're going to have a new Congress, so there may be new offices, new representatives, and opportunity to be in front of them and show a good face, so to speak. But also that now there's an emphasis with the incoming president on infrastructure. So, Dalton, in terms of going in there, and as Larry said, drawing that importance, what are some of your favorite techniques to give them the big picture and why surety is so critical right now?
No, absolutely, Mark. I think Larry really hit the nail on the head and just emphasized the value proposition of our product. Who do surety bonds protect? And the answer, and it's on the SFAA's new updated logo now, is protecting subcontractors, suppliers, and U.S. taxpayers. So to the extent that the incoming administration is really emphasizing infrastructure as a top priority for this next Congress, we want to do our best to position ourselves as a vital component to that puzzle. At the end of the day, it's critically important infrastructure gets built, but we want to make sure these projects are built in a way that properly manages construction risk, and surety bonds have played a vital component in that process for well over 70 years now, since the introduction of the Miller Act on the federal level. So to the extent we can position ourselves as a vital part of the infrastructure, the larger infrastructure picture, we're going to find ourselves in a very successful advocacy position with this new Congress.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great message. And I know beyond infrastructure, there are other important matters, some of which I know both organizations have been advocating for a number of years. Larry, what are some of the other top issues that you foresee being on the advocacy agenda for this fly-in?
Certainly, and just to piggyback a little bit on Dalton's point, I mean, we've heard from the incoming Biden administration that the Build Back America project or contemplation of a large infrastructure bill is going to be presented by the Biden administration. The other day, I think it was a couple of days ago, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce created a coalition of 150 organizations to actually have something in place, a bill in place by the 4th of July. So there's a big push on Capitol Hill right now. as far as infrastructure and infrastructure stimulus package is concerned. NASBP and SFAA over the past several years have looked at a couple issues, one in particular dealing with what we've always coined as Title 41, which is limiting or removing the federal Miller Act from inflationary index increases every 5 years. We've actually been successful at the House, on the House side, with getting legislation introduced and getting language in the Armed Services Bill to remove the federal Miller Act from indexing every 5 years. Unfortunately, we've run into roadblocks in the U.S. Senate. So hopefully this coming Congress, where the committee chairs have changed in the Senate, bolstered with the House, a good strong House that we've always had good support from with this particular issue. We're hopeful that the Senate will also go along with what the House has recommended now over the past couple of Congresses. So that's one issue that we certainly will be asking our fly-in participants to address. And I know Dalton will probably fill you in on another one, but I would say that's one that the attendees will be asked to speak on.
Hey, Dalton, I know that if they go on the infrastructure pathway, a component of that is maybe using federal loans and grants, which can sometimes then put into question what, if any, bond requirements may apply. Is that something that the organizations have been working on, and how might that take shape in this coming Congress?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I would say this is another top issue that we'll be focusing on with this upcoming fly-in, and that's to ensure any project that receives federal financing in the form of a TIFIA loan maintains consistent payment and performance security requirements, particularly when it comes to TIFIA finance projects that utilize alternative project delivery methods. So we've seen some inconsistencies at the state level with how projects utilizing alternative delivery, namely public-private partnerships, utilize surety bonds. Sometimes there's a bit more wiggle room than with traditional design bid build on how these longstanding bonding rules are applied. And to the extent that any project receives federal financing, we want to make sure that that project, particularly the design and construction of that project, is protected to the same extent it would be if it was designed, in a traditional design bid build approach. So we, ardently believe that, the TIFIA program should maintain consistent bonding requirements, and we'll be emphasizing that advocacy message during this fly-in, and really building off momentum we built in last Congress when we successfully introduced legislation on the House side that would accomplish this goal. So hopefully we'll be able to emphasize the similar advocacy messages we used last Congress to get that standalone bill introduced here during our fly-in in March.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
I know, Larry, that obviously with COVID pandemic and people working remotely and being at home, broadband has taken center stage, and particularly difficult situation for those in rural areas. Is that something on the advocacy agenda for NASBP and the surety industry?
Well, yes, and hopefully there would be some sort of component within a Biden administration Build Back America infrastructure bill that would include rural broadband, whether it be so for construction of rural broadband or what the component might be. But certainly, if we're talking about infrastructure build out for rural broadband opportunities, then performance and payment bonds should certainly be included in that conversation. We know that the Federal Communications Commission has actually required that rural broadband providers secure letters of credit on those types of infrastructure projects. NASBP and SFAA have advocated that a performance bond be included rather than only just a letter of credit. So the ISP provider can have a alternative source of security to post, whereas the letter of credit would go against the financial capital of the small ISP. A performance bond would have a little bit more flexibility for that ISP provider. So we've taken a couple different approaches, whether it be for construction of rural broadband build out or a FCC loan or grant fund for small ISPs. So we've got a couple different ways that we can go about achieving bonding requirements for rural broadband.
And Larry, we've had you on a couple past podcasts talking about rural broadband, so people should definitely check those out if they want to get some more information around that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so now I'm going to act like a cynic and go, why did people do this? Why did people go to congressional offices really listen to you? Does it really make a difference? So I will throw it up to either Larry or Dalton or both. Tell me, give me evidence that indeed this does make a tremendous difference.
I can jump in, Larry.
Okay, go ahead, Dalton.
Yeah. So, one anecdotal example, Mark, we saw last year, SFAA and a good amount of NASBP members went up to Capitol Hill and probably what was one of the last fly-ins in Washington before COVID hit, and really advocated hard on the priorities Larry and I mentioned earlier on today's call. That fly-in was at the beginning of March, and the standalone bill regarding TIFIA finance payment and performance bond requirements was introduced at the end of March. So not all fly-ins are going to work out that perfectly, where you've got, an advocacy message and a deliverable, weeks later. But without having our members go up and talk directly to members of Congress and their staff, our advocacy message is much weaker. We are only the strength of our advocacy voice is 100% dependent on the strength of our members' engagement. So cannot emphasize enough how important these fly-ins are, whether in person or virtual, are to the ultimate success of our collective organization's efforts.
Great. Larry, do you have any examples?
Well, actually, and having Dalton go first allowed me to think about this a little bit. And I would say that in one particular fly-in, a member came in and actually had a meeting with the chair of the House Armed Services Committee, which is a rare event. And I was fortunate enough to accompany this member to this particular meeting, where we had the opportunity to talk about the Title 41 issue, which was before the chairman's committee. And he, being that the Armed Services Bill is 700 pages or 800 pages, that certainly the member doesn't, or the chair doesn't know every nook and cranny about the bill.
Right.
So we were able to explain that particular issue that was before the chairman's committee. And he said, well, certainly I can support something like that. So you don't see that often, but that was a wonderful opportunity. And, if you're able to get a chairman of a committee like the Armed Services Committee for 5 minutes, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. Maybe to add two other examples real quick that I'll throw in, our industry success on individual surety came as a result of fly-in contacts, as well as we made progress on amending the SBA bond guarantee program, increasing the ultimate contract amount that could be underwritten in that program. So you guys have done a great job, not only taking words, but turning them into actions and translating them in a way that has produced real results for the surety industry. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
So before we end today, how do people get registered and participate so they can make a difference too?
I'll just start it by saying go to the NASBP website, click on the advocacy drop-down box, and you'll see the fly-in 2021 registration. Just click there, and it'll take you to the vendor site where you'll put in your information, where you're from, organizations that you are aligned with, such as the Associated General Contractors, American Subcontractors, Associated Builders and Contractors, all those groups that you work with at the state level. So the office has an idea of some of your background, and then it'll send it off. And from there, the vendor will begin to start to seek appointments on your behalf.
Yep. And similarly, we've got a link posted up under the advocacy section of SFAA's website at surety.org. And we will be posting the registration link on our weekly newsletter on a weekly basis, pretty much until now and until the deadline to register. So you will have ample opportunities for the rest of January and February to register for this event.
And we'll include a link in the description for this podcast so we can get everybody out there registered and participating in this virtual fly-in. And the date again, Larry or Dalton?
March 25th. Be there, be square.
March 25th. All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll have to have you guys back again for another podcast after the fly-in to talk about the success.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kat. Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just wanted to say thank you again to Old Republic Surety for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com.